of the online dinner party. And of course, we've got all kinds of amazing guests that have joined us that have got interesting things happening in their life. So I'm looking forward to hearing what they've got going on and what's happening with them, including an old friend who's got a play coming up. So Rhonda Handsome has got a play, I believe, in the New York area, if I remember correctly, and all along those lines. But she'll come back and talk to us about what she's got going on. But we've also got Lisa Driggs as well as Daniel Dezensky, and well as Howard Berg and Jason Vago. So I'm gonna bring them all in at different times and see what they've got going on, and we'll have this dinner party conversation as we oftentimes do, and all along those lines. So definitely, I'll bring up first Howard and see how his day is going. Like I said, sorry for the delay, but definitely that's the way life goes sometimes. And it's a rainy day here in Durham, North Carolina. It's been rainy all day long, and definitely kind of that miserable kind of weather. So how are things going with you, Howard, and how are things treating you?
Okay, I'm married. I know real pain. I have a nice wife. I'm just teasing. It's going fine. I'm ready for the show and look forward to sharing some strategies with your audience on how to stay on top of the information their life success depends on.
Yeah, well, one of the things that I've noticed is we've had Richard Rosner or Rick Rosner on, who's a mentor supporter and apparently has one of the highest IQs on one of our shows. He's regularly on our news show, but I see that you're the world's fastest reader, and I think I'm pretty fast at reading, but I probably can't compete with you. So, how did you get that rank, and what makes the world's fastest reader so fast?
Well, the short answer is I read faster than everyone else, but that's probably not the answer you're looking for. Uh, my backstory is I grew up in the projects in Brooklyn, and it was very violent, lots of gangs. It was a West Side Story without the music and dancing. And I met Bernardo. He had a knife and he wasn't smiling. And I found the safest place in my neighborhood was the library. Gang kids treat libraries like vampires treat churches. You've never been in a library and felt threatened by a group of gangbangers. So I read a lot and had college reading when I was 11. I went to the State University of New York at Binghamton, which is kind of the crown jewel of the state system, to major in biology when I was 17. And in my second half of my junior year, I got interested in learning in the brain. So I told the dean I also wanted to major in psychology. He said, "You only have 1 year left. You had no psych courses. You have to do a 4 year program in one semester, and well, 2 semesters. It takes 6 science courses each term and 2 4-hour labs. And I had 3 jobs." So he said, "I don't think you're smart enough." And that's when I realized they don't teach learning
Mm.
in school. They tell you what, why, and how, but not what will happen when you miss. You can hear a song once on the radio, you never forget it. You read the 7 habits of highly effective people, and the next day you don't know any habits. So I got up to 80 pages a minute. I finished the program in 1 year. I got in the 99th percentile on the GRE in biology, and I started teaching it to kids at 11, and they were going to college at 11 getting A's. So that's how it got started. And what I did is I watched my internal process, my cognitive activity. I turned part of my mind inward and observed what I was doing when I was reading. And I saw specific steps and skills that I was doing, and I replicated those into a program.
Wow. Now, I know earlier you mentioned that a lot of our kids aren't studying and aren't doing a lot of that kind of situation. I know part of the reason that they founded Pod TV is they wish that they would teach fiscal literacy. So, what are you doing to improve the education system?
Well, I was a teacher for 10 years. I could tell you the system is not improvable. It's gone. I'll give an example. I worked in a school in Brooklyn, 2% graduated. So I told the principal, let me help. I'll teach them how to learn. And his response was, it's not in the curriculum. So I'm like, how am I going to ruin your numbers? You got a 98% failure rate. So fine, he's the principal. I'm not. So I'm teaching biology, and one of my kids raises his hand because I don't know how to find the answers to the homework in the biology book, which is the class I'm teaching. So I'm showing him how to find the answers to the homework in the course I'm teaching. And the principal comes in and he says, "What are you doing?" And I told him, So I told you not to teach learning. You're not working. You're not doing your job. And he wrote down that I wasn't working because I was helping kids learn. And that's when I quit my job. I thought that was despicable. And it was bad enough. They only had 2% graduating. The student asked for help in the subject I was teaching in the book that I gave to him. And that wasn't my job. So, no, I had another student reading a book upside down and backwards. So I went to the dean of guidance. And I said, I think I have a student who's illiterate. He says, yes, Mohammed. He's never been to school. He doesn't know how to read or write. I said, but he comes every day. Most of my kids are truants. He's here. Why don't you get him a tutor and help him learn how to read? And he says, well, he'll be 21 in June and we'll throw him out. And if he comes every day, we're getting paid. So don't worry about it. I said, well, you got 6 months to help him. He's here every day. Don't you tell me how to do my job. And that's the school system. And that's why I'm not. So what I did is I started a program at berglearning.com to teach children the skills they should have learned on learning. And it's the parents that'll help them get those skills. The schools are not interested in helping. They want to dumb you down. The purpose of school is shut up and listen. They want you to get a job and sit quietly while someone tells you what to do all day. That's not how you make money. That's not how you become a leader. The way you become a leader, most people think you make more money, you work more hours, or you get another job. No, that isn't how you make more money. That's how you go broke and exhaust yourself because you make a little more, but not a lot more, and the taxes go way up, so you don't really come home with much. The way you make more money is you learn something new, people pay you more money to do. So instead of $15 an hour, you're making $700 an hour. Now you're making more money. How do you do that? You read 10 books by people who are doing what you dream of doing and did it right. It's a business plan. But most people haven't got the time to read. I read it in 3 hours. I had an 84-year-old read 3 books in 3 hours. So by learning how to learn, which isn't the goal is to get the screwdriver, the learning skill, to learn the things that'll make you more productive and profitable. That's what it's for. So for adults, they make more money, the students get higher grades, and everybody wins, and that's what I do.
It sounds fascinating, definitely very fascinating. I know that a lot of times people are complaining about the school system because it's so caught up in standardized testing. I've actually worked for a standardized testing company, so I know how that works and everything like that. So are we too going by the metrics and all along those lines, in your opinion? And what is your thoughts around that? Because I don't know, a lot of people are very dependable on the standardized tests, whether it's Pearson or Measurement or a number of the other companies.
Very familiar with that. Well, the school I was in, they couldn't read, write, or count, so it really didn't make a difference. How do I know? I gave them the answer sheet to the test during the test, and it was multiple choice and true, false. Everyone failed. They couldn't read the answer sheet. Okay, these are 16 and 17-year-old students who cannot read a true, false, multiple choice answer off an answer sheet during an exam. You can't teach them any science if they can't read a true false question off the answer sheet. And that was what they gave you to teach. And I try to help by teaching them how to think and learn and understand, but nobody was interested. So I started my own school, and my kids were doing a semester of lifelong developmental college psychology in 1 week. In 1 week, they took the CLEP, the AP test, and 15 out of 18 got full college credit to a sophomore course in 1 week, versus they can't read the true false sheet when you give it to them during the test.
Wow. Well, like I said, one of the things I do on this show is I bring in all kinds of amazing guests. I'm going to bring in a person that I've known for a number of years, that being Rhonda, who's got a play, and definitely interested in hearing about this play that she's got coming up and all along those lines. And it's definitely, she's been in that education space as well. So definitely want to bring her up and hear some of her conversations and thoughts about what you've been talking about and just what she's got going on with the play. And if you'll tell folks where the play is located at as well.
What a pleasure to be here. And
She disappeared. I'll try to bring her back.
I find Howard
Technology, gotta love
fascinating.
it.
Can you hear me?
While I'm working on that and everything, yeah, just talk a little bit more about what you've got going on in terms of what you think the skills are that are needed for leadership and all along those lines.
Me or her?
You, Howard,
Me.
and then
Oh,
I'll bring up
okay.
Rhonda what she's
Okay.
got going
The
on.
skills that we need to reading isn't learning. If it was, you'd read a calculus book and get an A. You can memorize a calculus book and fail because you don't know how to solve problems. You have a lot of formula, but you don't know how to use any of them. So you read to find what you need to know. You use study skills to understand what you found. You use memory skills so you don't forget what you just learned and you can use it when you need it. And this is a big one. And emotional intelligence skills. So you're in the right state of mind to use it. You don't get nervous on a test or flustered speaking in public, and you can control your state so you can draw upon the information you learn. None of that's taught in school. I
You're
teach
right,
that.
Howard. I admire you for your tenacity and clarity around the situation. I went to parochial school in Brooklyn. I am born and raised in Bed-Stuy, and I went to parochial school and to Brooklyn College. And I understand what you're saying, even though I was in a private situation. We are not being taught to learn and to be thinkers. We are thought to be, as you said, obedient and workers. And it's so funny because the play, the musical that I'm directing right now, the Blackbird Trilogy, which is part of the International Human Rights Art Festival at the Tank in New York City. Um, the Blackbird Trilogy is a modern day anthem for freedom and justice, and for us understanding our place in the world and being able to think critically about it. I'm so excited about Lindsay Wilson's work. She's a great singer songwriter, and to tell you the truth, I feel like I'm working with a modern day Odetta. She writes freedom anthems. She writes modern liberation anthems, and we need that today to free our minds. As in relation to what Howard was saying, our minds are bound with chains, and I really feel so sorry for the young people coming up. At least when I was coming up, we had reading comprehension, and from what he's talking about, that not only is there not comprehension, there's no reading. It's all around behavior modification, containing the children, and much to my surprise, some of it is around changing the gender of the children, which is more important, hiding it from the parents and not teaching the children anything. It really is a wild state. I think our state of education is really in a critical point. And Mark, I do want to say it has been so long since I've seen you, and how much I appreciate being here with you. And thank you so much for having me on with such great guests as Howard and Lisa. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about my work as a director in theater of Blackbird Trilogy, which is at the Tank on West 36th Street in New York City, here on Saturday the 14th. I'm up to my eyeballs in tech and rehearsals and all those kinds of things, but it's so incredibly exciting. We have stunning visuals. We have an everyman Greek chorus that is actually supplementing Lindsay Wilson's powerful message of freedom, freedom of thought, freedom of movement. And I hope that if you have any audience who are able to support us at the Tank this Saturday, that they will come out.
I hope so and everything. Lisa, share a little bit about what you've got going on as well, and then I'll definitely bring in some of the other people also.
Yeah, I wish I was in New York right now, Rhonda, so I could go and and see the play. And Howard, I could talk about. I'm in Canada. I grew up in Canada, so I went to Canadian through the Canadian school system, and I agree. When we grew up, it was definitely different from when my children grew up. But that's really, we can go on for days, on the education systems. So I am a new author. I'm a new author, and I'm talking about the taboo subject of menopause. Although it's not so taboo anymore, it's been in the news a lot. There are celebrities getting on board, with all the science-based, and a couple of the books came out at the same time as mine did, that are supposed to be, science-based, which means they promote hormone replacement therapy. But mine's a little bit different. It's based on my own story of how I was struggling and how I was able to shift my mindset and use my, my brain essentially, and my thoughts to help improve my symptoms and get me out of the rut that I was in. And the tiara has a whole thing with that. It's about unleashing your inner queen, and that's how the tiara comes in. It's part of the branding. There's one on the front of the book, So I'm on a mission to help women unleash their inner queen.
Lisa, what's the name of the book?
The book is called The Menopause Mind Shift.
I love that name. I love that name. And congratulations on this. It's so important to be talking about these topics, which are integral to our being human beings. This is a rite of passage. It is normal, and it is something that, as you're saying, is only now really being spoken about. But what strikes me about your book, or what you're saying about your book, is that you mentioned mindset. And that's something that I think is so important today, and that we really have to stress to our young people and also to our own demographic. Your mindset really influences how you are operating in this world. And that's why I have been working on this program called Aging Magnificently. It really is something that I think is so important, because we've had such a focus on youth that by the time you get to menopause, which really is around the time when a woman is at the height of her powers, and then she has this physical furnace and inferno going on in many different aspects of her life, that we really need to understand how to deal with it on so many different levels. I applaud you, and congratulations for the book.
Can you tell people how to get it? Can you tell people?
One thing I'm hearing in the book, one of the things I heard in everything is very interesting is this notion of mindset.
There's a menopausemindShift.com. Everything's there. All links to books, info about me, all kinds of other stuff. But Rhonda, I just wanted to say to your point there for a second that society, even my generation, I'm Gen X, right? And so all us Gen Xers that are going through this right now, there is everybody wants the quick fix. How can I fix this? I just want to feel better. And that's where the push for, the medications come in, rather than examining how we're actually living our lives, right? People want to be able to have their cake literally and eat it too, and not have that affect their lives. And I'm not saying, go on a health food diet or anything like that, but it is in general, is about how you treat your body inside and out. So,
it's not only how you treat your body, but also how you think about yourself and your body, which also goes back to Howard's point about critical thinking. We are not taught to be contemplative, to look inside and understand how we can manage this journey of life with our thoughts and our attention to ourselves, that is not on the superficial level, which is not on the consumer level, which is more in depth about our lives.
And people don't, though. They want that outside fix instead of looking within. And that's a great point, because that's exactly what happened to me. Once I started working on, what was going on inside, like you say, even emotionally and mentally, how I felt about myself, that was like the absolute key. How I felt about myself, because that how we feel about ourselves translates into every area of our life, man, woman, child, no matter what stage of life we're at.
And
Right?
that's actually related to aging magnificently. I say, my quote is, no matter the number of your years, always be aging magnificently. Because you have got to be thinking about that. You have really got to be thinking about that at every single age, that you are living a magnificent life. I think too much of our lives, it has a shadow over it, or too much of our lives is shallow, lived in this not fully enough.
I
Yeah.
agree.
Rhonda,
And
just
we'll
really
have
quick,
to
I want to
connect
introduce
after the
Daniel
show.
and Lisa as well, because they're part of the show and wanted to bring them in, and they probably are fascinated as well, because one of the things I'm hearing everybody say is mindset, and time to shift that mindset and definitely have a mind shift on a number of things and all along those lines. So Daniel, if you wanted to share a little bit about what you've got going on, and then definitely I know Lisa's in that space as well. But Daniel, you've been hearing some of these conversations, so share a little bit about your own journey as well.
Yes, Mark, thank you. To shift gears a little bit, and obviously it does create a little bit about the school system. And Howard, I can appreciate what you happened in the school system. My background is with school security and school safety. I was 24 years with the Secret Service. When I left there, I came down here to Florida, where I currently am, with the county system, and worked for their school system. I had 140 schools and over 100,000 students, and I was the one solely in charge. So I kind of got thrown into this a number of years ago when this all happened. And obviously, we've all heard about what happened in Columbine. And these school systems stayed with lockdowns, but what happened was they decided that, well, as a knee-jerk reaction, we need to do something different. So when I talked to teachers and administrators, what usually would happen when I would suggest training, drilling, they would say, look, I understand what you're saying. I agree with what you're saying. However, I'm getting my orders from the superintendent, from the principal, from the school board, and there's nothing we can do about it. This is the way we have to run the drills. So I said, okay, fine. We'll switch gears and start talking to parents. So I go on these podcasts and talk to parents about their children, because most parents, I'm old school. You would just take your kids to school, drop them off, see you later. I got work to do, after school sports, whatever the heck you got going on, see you later. And when they would get home, well, when we used to sit around the table, you would ask about their day. And it usually was about what subjects they learned, or what sports they were in, or theater, or whatever it was they were in. That's gone. I mean, nowadays kids, it's the dopamine addiction to the phones. They're upstairs, you get maybe 30 seconds. So I tell parents, ask your children, what's happening during school emergencies? Easy one is fire. We've been doing fire drills for hundreds of years. You could do a fire drill blindfolded, for God's sake. But what's happening with these school emergency drills, and I know everybody focuses on the active shooter drills because that's the one the media focuses on. That's the one people mostly get scared about. It does happen, but it's very, very rare. I went through training with teachers and administrators, and I want them to have the confidence to just stay in a lockdown. And I'm sure Howard's heard this, and I'm sure Rhonda has heard this from in the school system. However, there are private organizations out there, marketing companies, that push other type of agendas. One is called Run, Hide, Fight, which came from the business world, which basically means if you have danger coming in, you would run. If you can't, you would hide. And then as a last resort, you would fight. That somehow bled over into schools, which is just an absolute dangerous and liability causing kind of training. There's another one called ALICE. It's an acronym, ALICE. Won't go through the whole thing. But basically what that is, it's more of a reactionary type of training. And it's absolutely wrong. Right now, it's up to over 300 million in civil lawsuits. So I asked parents to find out what type of training your children are going through. Are you staying in the classroom and locking down? Are you evacuating? Are you being told to throw things at a gunman if they ever did get into the classroom. Absolutely dangerous. Lockdowns work. They've worked for years. They are not sitting ducks. And I ask all school systems and parents also to tell the school system during class time, keep the doors locked. Keep the doors locked. You're one step ahead of it already. And from then on, it's just a confidence building thing. You'll turn the lights off, blind kids sit on the floor, help is on the way, good to go. So that's in a nutshell what I try to put out there to parents to pass on to their school systems and to protect their children.
Hey, Danny, what do you think, just really quickly, and I want to get to Lisa as well, but what do you think of a lot of school systems that are doing various lockdowns, whether it is confiscating phones or confiscating different other things? I remember even way back when the movie that was Lean on Me and things like that, they were definitely talking about types of security that were existing and everything. So are we doing enough in terms of making sure that those things don't get into the school system, whether it's the phones that y'all were referring to earlier, kind of the technology, or even the weapons as well?
Well, that is the main part of what's happening in schools now. It's weapons. It's not so much active shooters. It's weapons, knives, guns, bats, whatever, brought into the school system. Watch out for technology, because if you want to put in magnetometers or metal detectors, that's basically what's called security theater. Looks good, doesn't do anything. I mean, it doesn't do a darn thing. You're wasting money. It's the humans that are involved, not the technology. Yes, cameras are good in one respect, and having, a locked or a secure lobby area is another aspect, but don't push technology as much. Train your individuals correctly. The phone issue, that's a whole nother ball of wax. I think they're going to try to start it down here in my county. You do have to start at the lower level. I'm not going to tell high school kids now you got to put phones away. That's impossible. I mean, they're addicted to it. You got to start at the lower level with elementary school kids, take that, and as they grow, they don't need the phones anymore. I mean, it's been proven over in Europe. Do you think kids over in Asia are using phones? Heck no. You wonder why our test scores are down? Because they're on the stinking phones all the time. I have a son in college, and he's at Indiana University, first semester. Couldn't take it. Why? Addicted to the phone and video games. Absolutely addicted. He's coming home next week, and we're going to try to figure it out. But this stuff is just, I think it's just destroying our society, social media itself. That's a whole nother subject. That's not my lane. I'm just saying what's happening personally. But it's something that, hey, we're going to have to figure this out, because this social media and these phones are, you're killing these kids. I mean,
it's an evil necessity these days, unfortunately. If you don't have social media accounts, it's hard to, market a business, anything like that. But yeah, it can be draining, right? And time consuming, all this, you have to make sure you engage and all that kind of stuff. Well, anyway, so it's a double-edged sword.
yes.
It's definitely a double-edged sword. Speaking of double-edged swords, Danny, just really quickly, I want to hear from Lisa as well. What are your thoughts around, because I know even here in this area in Durham, we've got resource officers. Some of them are trained in terms of having been officers, sometimes even present officers, and so things like that. So what are your thoughts around resource officers in the high school system?
Yes. Well, actually, we're very fortunate here in Florida. They're in the entire school system. The legislative passed enough budget. Our people, the school resource officers, highly trained. This is something they want to do. And I tell, when these kids raise up their hackles saying, oh my gosh, they're going to be arrested. That's not what they're there for. They're not there to arrest you, harass you, step in for teachers. They're there to protect you. They're an advocate for yourself, parents, and the administration. Absolutely. Armed school resource officers should be in the school system. Absolutely. That, and number two of that is you keep yourself safe. You've probably seen a number of incidents from Marjory Stoneman Douglas out in Nashville, Idaho, Newtown, Connecticut. You had administrators go and challenge a school shooter with what? Words? That they're beyond that point. Don't do that. That's some part of this training, but Alice training teaches you to confront it. What are you doing? You're not going home. No, don't do that. No, that is absolutely wrong. They're not heroes. They're not. They just left a family and kids. You're not a hero to do that. Keep yourself safe. Lock yourself down.
Yep. Lisa, introduce yourself as well. Like I said, part of what I do is just bring different people on and we learn from each other and everything like that. So Lisa, definitely introduce yourself
Lisa?
as well. Yes,
Lisa.
that Lisa.
Yep.
Yes.
Oh, okay. A very popular name. Hi. Sorry I'm late. I had a senior moment finding the link, but I'm Lisa Girardi. I just wrote a memoir about being abused as a kid, and I also am an English professor. I'm an adjunct at 3 different online colleges. I do have experience with K through 12 teaching. I didn't like it because I'm not really a kid person. And I am from South Florida and know people whose children went to Marjorie Stoneman Douglas. Like you mentioned that hits really close to home. A boy, well, he's a man now. A boy I met at a bar mitzvah a really long time ago. His son was murdered. So that hits really close to home. That whole thing. Of course, I don't have to deal with that with online teaching. When I did teach on ground college, though, we did have like weird students that could probably shoot a school, like that were kind of scary. I had a student who I taught 101, the journal requirement, and just about every entry of his journal was about how he hated women. I brought it to the department chair, and of course they could do nothing. I think that's the issue. No one can do anything until someone kills someone,
That's
I
definitely one of
find
the
it
issues.
really disturbing that when Howard brought his issues to administrators, and when you bring your issues to administrators, they throw their hands up. We can't do anything. Yet now they are entering into the children's lives in such a way that they are keeping their specific information away from the parents and telling these children to change their sex and that they change their gender and all kinds of things that can lead to a lifetime of medical issues and psychological issues. But for something like you're talking about, that kind of misogynistic mindset that this young person had, or having children in an institution but not being taught is not even dealt with.
It reminds me of even when I was a kid, 'cause this happened to me, bullying. Right. Back when I was in school, I didn't dare, like, I never even thought of telling the teacher or the principal that I was getting bullied. Right. I don't know if anything, would have been done, if it had. I doubt it, because that's just the way it was. And then what becomes of those bullies, right? Some grow up, fine. That was maybe just a phase, but others, who knows, like, psychologically and all that.
Lisa, I had that situation even in my my parochial school, where the person sitting behind me would daily stick her protractor through the slit in the seat. And finally, I asked the teacher if I could change my seat, because Edwina Prescott was doing this to me. And she said to me, "What do you think? This is a restaurant where you can just change your seat the way you want to?" And I felt like, well, I thought I did what I could do. And that's how she responded to me.
And the funny thing is, if you had stuck up for yourself, then you would have been the one in trouble, started a fight, that kind of thing. I was very, very fortunate when my kids were in school, and again, I'm in Canada. I'm not sure how much different, the school systems are between here and the US. Oddly enough, my son was getting bullied by a child who used to be his best friend. But then they started to grow a little older and things. So I actually, having been through the situation myself, how do I counsel my child? And knowing the other child, I said to him, Nick, do what you need to do. Stick up for yourself. And he did. The child, ended up cutting out a line or whatever in front of him, kind of thing. And it just, anyway, and my son ended up pushing him because he did, he challenged my son. So my son pushed him and they did go to the office. And then fortunately with the guidance counselor and the principal, the other child was told he was bullying. That was a form of bullying. And, and we had told the principal, we gave Nick permission to stick up for himself because sometimes, you have to. You have to protect yourself sometimes. I had to when I was a kid. I had to challenge a bully, and actually, finally, she did back down. Did back down one night.
The other Lisa and everything you mentioned. The other Lisa.
But I don't know.
You mentioned misogyny and everything, and I know that that's something that is very prominent even in this society. So tell me a little bit more about the book that you've written and how you went through and some of the things that you went through in your own life, because the book sounds very fascinating with what you went through and all along those lines.
Oh, sure. My book is called Chasing Normal. There's a few books called Chasing Normal. My subtitle is Finding Love After Surviving Physical and Emotional Abuse. I was first sexually abused at age 2. It was by my step uncle, and people always ask me, how do you even remember that? I don't know. I wish I didn't. Some people luck out and don't remember these things. But my mother she was escaping from her second husband at that time. And we had to go live with my grandmother, and she had a stepson who was a teenager, and that is who abused me. And then the abuse continued after we left there because my mother was very physically abusive. And then she had a married alcoholic boyfriend who would abuse her and me. So it was just a lot of stuff. And I just remember, even as a kid, like kind of looking at my mom and thinking she was just a ridiculous individual. Like, why is she choosing this man, and not only did she choose him, not to blame the victim or anything, but she would poke the bear. She would just like get him all angry. I'm like, oh my gosh, what is happening? So I, of course it affected my relationships throughout my life. Either I was emotionally abusive to someone or they to me. But I finally found my prince when I was 33. So I know you're saying, but Lisa, you're 28 now. No, I'm actually 53. So
I get you.
Yeah. So I finally found the person that I could have a normal relationship. I don't know if anybody's normal really, but
we're not.
We don't.
We're not.
Yeah, we don't hurt each other, so that's good. And I have a son who is 27. And what you were saying about fight the gunman, that came up. I think it was Daniel was talking about that. That came up with my son in school when they were in high school, when they told him pick up a computer monitor and throw it at the gunman. And so I told him, don't you dare. You get out of there. Do not draw attention. I told him, I'm not raising a hero. Just get out.
Lisa, I really admire your bravery for chronicling your story of abuse and being so frank about it. And I do hope that the information that you share will help others in what could be similar situations or even worse. I witnessed my mother as a victim of domestic violence, and it really had a permanent effect on me. And so I know how traumatic that can be. What I wanted to say, what a pleasure for me it has been to be on this dynamic panel. Unfortunately, I do have a hard out time, but I feel so honored. I thank you again, Mark and Howard and Daniel and my two Lisas. I am so happy to have had this time to share with you. And I want you all, if you want to stay in touch, you can stay connected to me at RhondaHandsome.com. That is my website. I'm on Blue Sky as Great Gray 17 and on Twitter as at Rhonda Handsome, and that's like a handsome man without the D. And I'm also on Facebook. But I thank you all so much. And Mark,
Hey, Rhonda, before you leave and everything, because I know you got to leave, one of the things I get everybody to do, and I'll do this at the end for everybody that's on this panel and everything, is if you have any ways that you can be contacted, which you already did, but also it's a global network. So any message of positivity that you want to share to those folks that are watching on the global platform and everything. So that's something I try to get everybody to do, is give a message of positivity. Call it my own.
Absolutely. And mine is, no matter the number of your years, always aging magnificently. Thank
Love
you
it.
very much.
I love it.
That's a
Thank
great
you.
one. Definitely love that and everything. Appreciate that. Howard, one of the things that we've also talked about on this show a number of times is the imposter syndrome and all along those lines, and kind of y'all have alluded to it a couple of times, but how have you gotten past that? Because a number of times people are afraid to step into their greatness. So I'll start with you, Howard, but I want to hear from everybody else their thoughts as to how they have conquered that imposter syndrome with the fear of success.
Well, I really never had the problem. I was on stage when I was 9. I sang professionally. In 1960, I was getting $3,000 for 10 hours of singing, which is about $30,000 today. I sang in Atlantic City and in a lot of other places. So I was on stage for as far back as I can remember, and I never felt uncomfortable. I've been on about 3,000 shows and had my own show, and I just feel at home. To me, the camera is just a person sitting there talking to you. It's just another person, just like we're talking now. And there's nothing to be upset about. It's just a conversation the way you would have it with anyone else. And just don't put it in your mind as anything else, and you'll be fine.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Lisa Girardi and everything, because you said something that caught me off guard to somewhat, because you said that you are in the teaching profession, but you don't really like kids and everything. So some people would say that that's almost a contradiction and all of those. So how did you manage to do that? Get into a field that involves teaching?
How I managed to do that, I believe it is laziness. So what happened was, when I was in college, my first major was television production. That's what my father had done. And my father, I never had a relationship with him, but I knew that's what he did. So I wanted to try it. And while I was majoring in television production, and this was in like 1991, 92, it was a lot of mechanical hands-on switching of things that just blew my mind. I took a lot of creative writing courses during that time as electives, and I sat down with my advisor, and he said, you know what, if you take a Shakespeare and 2 grammar classes, you're out of here with a bachelor's degree. And I said, let's do that. That sounds good. So then what do you do with a bachelor's in English? Well, you teach. That's what you do. If you're not going to law school, you teach. So I ended up going to graduate school and teaching like English 101 and stuff there. But then when my son was school age, I thought it would be good to have his same schedule. So I taught at a regular middle school, a high school that was for kids who like failed at every other high school and had legal problems and such, alternative school. And I taught at a Montessori school, which was K through 8. And the Montessori school is okay because it wasn't as like, loud. But the issue was like, I'm okay with teaching the whole discipline stuff. I just can't with that. Like, oh, you got a green sticker today. No, just sit down and do your work. Like, I don't want to do the tap dancing with you.
That's the Gen X in you, Lisa. That's the Gen X.
Yeah. I would
grew
have
up. It was don't speak till you're spoken to, and
right.
The kids sat at a separate table at Christmas. They weren't at the main table.
Yeah.
We had our own table. I don't know if the guys can agree, but I actually just want to say, Howard, it's funny you were a singer. That was what I wanted to do. I actually have half of my degree in voice from way back when. So too funny that you grew up being a singer, Howard. But yeah, it's funny.
I hit puberty. That was the end of that.
Into the singing voice and everything like that. Just gave up on that career. But we're not going to be the next.
I'm a writer.
Or the next whoever.
Well, my writing,
many lives, right? We have many lives.
My
Oh,
writing
yeah.
is grossed over 65 million, so I'm doing more with writing. It did better for me than singing.
I could see that.
What advice
I
would you
did
give a folks
stand
that
up
want to
comedy.
I didn't get to keep
Oh,
all
wow.
of it, by the way. I was the author, but it grossed over 65 million.
Well, that's great. What advice would you give for folks that want to get into writing or that want to get into leadership? I mean, one of the things I hear is that there are constant coaches. Some of the coaches are better than
Yeah.
others, but it does seem like we have an abundance of coaches and an abundance of writers. And they do say everybody has their own story. So, what advice would you give to folks that want to get into
Yeah.
writing
Well,
and even coaching?
I wrote my last book in 5 hours and it went #1 on Amazon the next day. So most people are overcomplicating it. Basically, what you do is you write down the theme, what you want to write about, and then you free associate, get a list of the topics that you want to include, and then put them in the right order. And then treat each of the topics as an essay test question on a timed exam, because you've come acclimated when you're on a test to not worry about spelling and grammar, but to finish the questions on a time basis. And you answer each question with an essay. And then when you're done, you have the first draft of your book, and your questions, you duplicate them. So one is the contents and one is your questions. And then you rewrite the information to make it more cogent, clean up the transitions, make it more accurate. You might try using a voice to text app to answer the questions, because not everyone types quickly enough to get their ideas out. I could type 125 words a minute, but most people, that's not their normal speed. So they'll do better with a voice text app. Even Word does that on autopilot.
Mhm.
So basically, you have your idea, you have your list, you put it in the right order. You teach each thing is an essay question. You write out the essay, and half your book is done, and you just clean it up, and you got a book. And I recommend keeping a book 40 to 60 pages, unless you're going the pro route, because people won't read it. The purpose of most books today is to give like 10 tips on how to learn faster, or 10 tips on how to have a safe school. They don't want to read 800 pages. They want to spend 10, 15, 20 minutes, learn what you told them, and they're done. And hopefully you capture their information in the process and build your list so you can connect with them more. Now, I've read real books. My real books take usually a week to a week and a half, because they're 300-400 pages. But you don't really make money on books. The money is in audio video. So if I have a friend, his book is $10, but his training program is $10,000, and the program is the book, the same program. He just talks more, and instead of telling you what to do, he shows you how to do it step by step, and he charges you another $10,000 for what you could have gotten for $9 or $10 from the book. So you'll do much better with an audio and video product than you will with a book. And my products, by the way, are at Berg Learning, BERG learning.com, if they're interested.
Sounds good. Hey, both Lisas, I know a lot of people that are, and actually the gentleman, Daniel as well, they are interested in writing about things that are difficult to talk about, but then they are afraid to write about those. Because I've had some friends that have been in abusive relationships and want to write about those things, but both of you kind of jumped off the ledge and talked about those things that were difficult to talk about. I mean, menopause, like I mentioned to you, Lisa, the Lisa that wrote the book on menopause. I do have a friend that did a whole thing about menopause within the African-American community, and Almasadi is a good friend of mine, and she's definitely been in that space where she's trying to get people to understand that it doesn't mean the end of your life just because you're going through that period and all along those lines. So a lot of times people don't want to talk about the difficult kind of topics and everything. So how did you get the courage to talk about those kinds of topics? A lot of times people are afraid to tackle things that might reveal some skeletons or might dig up some past hurts. Either Lisa that wants to take it first.
For myself, it became a personal story. It didn't start off that way. I was on the "this sucks" train for a long time, and it was going to be about how bad it was. But then I call 2023 my transformative year. I got tired of feeling tired of feeling miserable after years and years, and decided I was going to do something about it. So I tried things that I already knew how to do, but in a different way, right? Took time to meditate, started kind of visualizing, me back in my bikini, all that kind of stuff. And then things started to improve. And I noticed, amongst groups of women, because I was looking for support, right? And everybody was, or most, not all, but most were the negative. And I found myself offering advice to them. Even though I was going through my own stuff, I was trying to bring them up. And, when I noticed I was doing that, and then, was seeing things improve, my life was improving, I was feeling better, looking better, all that kind of stuff. It was kind of a chain reaction. One thing just came, after another. And that became the idea of the book. Speaking with my husband, he said, he still says, you are really onto something here, because people don't think in that way, that the way we think about a situation can actually affect that situation. Right. And it became same true. Attitude is everything. If you're going to feel yucky, yucky things are going to happen. So even now, if I'm not, I'll use the word aware of how I'm feeling, or, that's when I will get, a hot flash or something like that. But it's by no means, that's me getting back in my head, right? Instead of out of my head and into my, my awareness of how I'm speaking, how I'm acting, because we always have a choice when we get up in the morning, how we're going to handle the day. What about you, Lisa?
Well, in writing about my childhood, honestly, it started out as I thought it would be somewhat of a funny book, not the sexual abuse, because that's never funny, but just growing up with my crazy mom, because it would happen like whenever I was in a book club situation or group situation, any situation where people going around sharing memories of their childhood, like someone would say, oh, my mom made the best Christmas cookies. I would say, my mom got mad at her alcoholic married boyfriend and picked up our Christmas tree and threw it across the room and screamed, Merry effing Christmas. And like people would just be like, like frozen. And I was like, oh, my story is different. So I started writing down all these things. I didn't really know what I was going to do with them. And it took me 10 years to finally, from starting to publication. And one of the reasons it took me 10 years is even though my mother was very abusive, I didn't want to hurt her feelings. Well, she died 5 years ago, and we didn't have the best relationship. She was in Florida. She wouldn't let me help her. She lived all alone. She died alone. It's too graphic for this, but I was a little bit relieved when she died, because I wouldn't have to worry about her anymore, and try to help her when the relationship was so weird. And I could finally just write. But even with that, writing, I have a chapter about my ex-husband in there, and I've changed his name, but still, if anybody's going to sue me, it's him. So I still am a little, like I had to decide, do I want to tell the truth, or do I want people to like me? And I just decided I wanted to tell the truth, because now people who have read my book, there's this young woman at my gym read it, and she came and sat down next to me on the floor and was telling me it was like I was reading my own life. And I wanted to hug her, because I feel like I'm old and tough and I've been through it. It's fine. But she's so young. I wanted to be like, oh my God, I'm so sorry you went through that. So I want to get the truth out there so people know they're not alone. And they should seek whatever help they need. And they are not the owner of that shame. For a long time, I was ashamed. But then I thought, why am I ashamed? I'm not molesting little kids. Right? I mean, so I think I've gotten off track with the question, but
that's okay.
There's my answer.
I've actually been thinking about the right way to say this, but I can relate in more than one way, because not to your extent, but I had, some stuff happen to me from a family
Mhm.
member when I was young as well.
So many of us have.
Too many.
Mhm.
Many.
Way too many.
Way too many. Anyway, so that's very, I think it's really courageous for you to tell your story in that way. And
It just
I
felt good.
thought about the same thing. I did get permission for one person that I, wrote about.
Mhm.
And the other one being my husband, because he had some things happen to him that affected me as well, which made
Mhm.
my situation worse. And anyway, but, I think it's important for us to all tell our stories and because you're like me, we're on missions to help other people, right? To make
Right.
sure,
Absolutely.
that they're aware and don't go through, what we did,
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of
Yeah.
people just try to bury it and get through their lives, but it
keeps
doesn't stay
coming back.
buried.
If you don't deal with it, it keeps coming back, right?
Oh, yeah.
And the funny thing is a lot of women have said this, that things like that have happened to them in their childhood or past or whatever that were traumatic, when they reach these years, the menopause year, that stuff comes back all of a sudden.
Yeah,
They're
but
like
and
reliving kind of thing, and this stuff comes back and it's
ironically,
like, oh my
Daniel
God,
probably
I
can
thought I
speak to
dealt with
this.
right?
A lot of times
You
it's not just
deal with it again.
Right.
I know women are definitely abused and oftentimes openly abused. There are a lot of men that have been abused as well and everything, and
Mhm.
sometimes it's psychological abuse.
Definitely that happens as well, for sure.
Mhm.
It's not all just women. Yeah, we had, acknowledge that as far as, that situation.
Oh, yeah. No, my mother gave up custody of my brother and, was very rude to him his whole life. So definitely he had to have some issues. I wasn't close to him, and then he ended up passing away in 2021. So definitely she was abusive to my brother for sure.
Daniel's been pretty quiet.
Oh, no, I didn't want to jump in because obviously it's a subject that's, on the other side of, what I've been
Right.
talking about.
Yeah.
But back to Mark's point of, the anger and fear of,
Daniel, really quickly,
of writing.
what got you to write your book? And like I said,
The reason I wrote it was I wanted to get something down. I wanted to get, it's a very niche area, and it's a very uncomfortable area to talk about. But after Uvalde, and if you remember Uvalde, Texas, at elementary school where the law enforcement stood outside for 45 minutes before they finally went in and saved these children who were dying, as they were standing there. And it just made me so angry. My wife just said, look, you got to put this stuff down. So I did.
Mhm.
And the book is called The First 5 Minutes. And I went to the Howard Berg School of Writing the book. And I say jokingly, only because I wanted a guidebook. I did not want a 300 or 400 page diatribe of EduSpeak where it's going to sit on a shelf and just collect dust. I wanted a short guidebook that was concise, that you could read easily, and you could get the information you wanted right away. It's only 77 pages long. Take about an hour and a half to read. And it was for parents and teachers and students to read it. And it basically was, look, the basic thing, when I went through the Secret Service, all about implicit memory. We had to shoot every month. Every month we had to qualify. The only agency that has to do that. And it just became rote. And I try to make the example of when you tie a shirt or when you put a seatbelt on, or tie a tie, where it just, you don't even think about it. You get in the car, what do? You put the seatbelt on. You don't even think about it. It's not a process you go through. So I wanted the training to be where you did it basically without thinking. You just went through this process. Hey, I know what to do. I've done this so many times. I know what to do. Lights off, door locked, all this stuff that you have to do, which is very simple. However, during an emergency situation, no one knows how they're going to react. I could tell stories. I've got schools where a third of the teachers, where they've gone through training, when they had an actual event, a third of them froze. It happens. It's going to happen.
Yeah.
So I wanted that, to come out in the book. Again, it's a short book. The reason it's called The First 5 Minutes is because the FBI said most, not all, but most of your school shootings happen within 3 to 5 minutes. So that's why I call it The First 5 Minutes. And again, it's just a concise guidebook. It's on Amazon. You can plug in First 5 Minutes. Again, like Howard said, I'm not here to sell books. My whole thing is basically about the message, and the message being that lockdowns work. They always will work, because why? Shooters will not shoot out a locked door. That's the question. That's the answer I get back from the devil's side of it, saying, oh no, they're going to get into the classroom and kill these kids. They're sitting ducks. When that door is locked, they're not going to take the time to shoot out a locked door. Not going to happen, because they got a clock going in their head. They're looking for easy access. It's easy to see the videos of some of these shooters that go along and they go into open areas, not locked doors. So that was the reason for the book. And, again, it's just something that's an easy read that I hope people get something out of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like an easy read. And like you said, a lot of people are concerned about that safety, because there's definitely safety concerns. I know a lot of people, even here at the Cultural Arts Center that I work at, we've had cameras and things like that, even though I don't know that the camera system is all that effective now and everything. But what is your thoughts around people that have a lot of cameras around buildings? Because you even see that, we're going to go into Christmas season. I know a lot of department stores have a lot of cameras, but even in those camera situations, there are still incidents that happen and everything. So just want your take on public cameras, because even now we hear a lot of people talking about how they are convinced that whenever a crime is happening, that there are eyes in the sky and everything that can see what's going on. Even if you watch the crime shows, they talk about the cameras that are here or there, whether it's in a small city like the one I'm in here in Durham, or whether it's a bigger city like New York or Los Angeles or something like that. So what are your thoughts around the prevalence of cameras in our society, Daniel?
Absolutely. It's not Minority Report. It's not like the movie, but it's getting darn close. And I agree with it. Look, this United Healthcare CEO, those cameras, thank God they would have found this guy. So I'm glad. Kudos to the NYPD. I'm law enforcement. Of course, I'm going to back that kind of stuff. That kind of stuff is not invasive. It's enough where at least if something happens, you're going to catch somebody in that thing. Okay, is it going to be getting to an area where it could be invasive? Yeah, that I'm sure civil rights lawyers will be all over it. But right now, I agree. It's the greatest thing to have those amount of cameras where law enforcement can use it. Yes.
Yeah. And I know they've even talked about it in the school system. I don't know if Howard had that where he was at. And by the way, my cousin just recently retired because he had a replacement. I think it was a replacement knee, a replacement of one of the other body parts or something like that. So he just retired after a 20-year career down in the GBI office. So he actually retired fairly young because he's younger than my brother. So he's probably in his early 50s. So he's getting ready to retire and trying to figure out what his next step will be, whether it's going into business or whether it's going into some other field. But he's even talked about doing legal consulting, like doing some law enforcement consulting for different organizations and things along those lines. So what advice would you give to people that are getting out of law enforcement? Because like I said, I got some other friends, even here in Durham, that are thinking about retiring in the next couple of years. And one friend of mine, or an acquaintance, he and his wife opened a bed and breakfast. They actually opened it while he was a police officer. And I think he's still a police officer, but I think he's about ready to head to retirement. But they've done successfully well with Moorhead Manor, which is their bed and breakfast. So what advice would you give to folks that are thinking about getting into retirement, particularly retirement from law enforcement?
Well, that's tough, because being an alpha personality, I thought I could do it. I'm down here in Florida. I was going to sit on a beach, drink beer. That was it. I'm done. That's it. 3 months of that, it's the routine. You're like, I was driving my ex-wife crazy. She said, you got to do something, because you're so bored. You're just into that routine, and you want to help people. You find out in later years, and I'm sure both Lisa and even Howard can relate to this, and even you, Mark. I had no idea that I was an empath. None. Why would I think I was an empath? Why would somebody tell me that? Well, after you go through certain things and some therapy and other things in relationships, all of a sudden you find out, like, hey, you're an empath. And that's why, I guess, when I was a kid, I wanted to be a fireman. I wanted to be a policeman. I wanted to help people. And you find that stuff out, and then you're like, oh, okay, I feel much better when I'm with customer service, when I'm talking to people, when I'm helping somebody. You just get this instant feedback. So that, from law enforcement perspective, I didn't want to be a cop. I was a kid, I thought cops were jerks. What the heck do I want to be a cop for? I'm trying getting pulled over by a cop. They always look really rough and tough. Be a cop because you're like, oh my God, these guys are jerks. But no, once I got into the field and started doing it, I was fortunate because I could go to other avenues obviously within the Secret Service, but also within even law enforcement parts, because my stepson is law enforcement down here in Palm Beach, and he loved it. So it's just for certain people. But you talked about retirement, and I do have some people that are retired that then went into other industries, private or local or airport police or something that wasn't as intense, but they could keep up the same routine. So it's hard because, again, I had to do something. So it's kind of funny, but I actually worked in a grocery store for a while, and I don't know, because I just wanted to do something. So I don't know what it was. We have a Publix down there. There's another one called Winn-Dixie.
Love Publix.
Yeah, I know Publix.
Yeah.
I tell you what, when you think about it, it's like, oh, these people, I'm sure they're fine. No, they're busting their butts. I had people that worked in Winn-Dixie. He goes to me, yeah, I've been here for 30 years. Wait, 30 years at the same store? Oh yeah, at the same store. And it just, they're working. I mean, it's tough work. It's not as easy as you think. So I could take it for like a couple of weeks. I said, man, this is way too intense. It's more intense than law enforcement. So it just.
It's funny that you said that. It's funny you said that, Daniel, because as you were saying that, I was thinking that I think the first long job that my cousin Jonathan had before the GBI officer and everything along those lines was he worked, and I can't remember, it was either Circuit City or one of those kind of like stores that you get avalanche, particularly around this time, around right after Thanksgiving, which was Black Friday, and definitely around the Christmas season. And I asked him, I was teaching him when I asked him what other jobs he was thinking about going into, and I think he mentioned like a possible cigar bar that he and some friends are thinking about opening. But when I mentioned the idea of going back into sales, and particularly that kind of sales, he was basically like, hell no, I'm not going back into that. You couldn't talk me into going back into that environment, because that is a very difficult job. I think he thinks it's even more difficult than the law enforcement and everything along those lines, because those customers can be very cantankerous, to say the least, and everything. So he's like, no, I'm not going back to that. That's one thing I know I'm not going back into.
Makes sense. Yes.
Yeah, a lot of folks, sometimes people are thinking that there are easy jobs and everything like that, but they're not always easy. One thing I'm hearing that is interesting is I'm hearing both of you, or a couple of you on this show, mentioning this idea that you went into fields that you would not have thought of yourself as having gone into. I heard that from you, Danny. I heard that from Lisa, and everything. So Howard, would you have been an educator all along, or did you know that you were going to be an educator, or was there a time that you thought that, like they thought about their professions, that all teachers were jerks and things along those lines, or did you always know that you wanted to be a teacher? And the same with you, the other Lisa, did you always know that you wanted to go into the fields that you went into?
I actually wanted to be a psychologist. I wanted to be a therapist. Which they say crazy people gravitate towards that. Ted Bundy was a psychology major. So there's that. My stepbrother, Eric, was a psychology major. And at that time, he was working in a halfway house for schizophrenics. And he told me, absolutely do not choose this career path. I make no money, and I deal with people who urinate in jars and keep it in their rooms and stuff. Just don't do it. So that's why I majored in television production, because I was always interested in, TV, how does it work? But then, no, I never thought of myself as a teacher, really, because I honestly wasn't a kid person even when I was a kid. I just found them to be loud. I just wanted to read. That hasn't changed. I just want to read, really. That's all. If someone would pay me to read, I'd be there.
Well, apparently Howard's figured this out. Howard, you've read the whole book, and you're the world's fastest reader. So how many books have you written? How many books have you read in your life? I'm looking in the back of your library and everything, and I'm thinking you've probably read thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of books just in your life so far. And is there a book that you haven't read that you want to read that is on the wish list of books?
Well, I read about 30,000 books, but your first question was about the job. I wanted to be a psychobiologist, and I found out for every 1,000 PhDs, there were 2 jobs, and the average income was like $28,000. So you basically had to go to college for 6 more years, spend about $200,000-300,000 on a degree, and then spend the rest of your life trying to pay it off. But it was worse than that, because when I got out of college, I had 2 majors, bio and psych, and I went to downstate to get a job in a lab with primates, which would have been a good first step for a PhD in primate research. They basically paid $28,000. You cleaned the cages and you got bit, and the monkeys flung feces at you. I said, all right, I'll do that. They said, no, we have other interviews. So it ended up someone with a master's degree got that wonderful job. So I'm like, okay, I go to college 2 more years, and then I could clean monkey feces and have them bite me. I said, I don't think, I said, that's not really my dream career. And that was the end of that. And what I've done is I've taken the information I learned about the brain and turned it into business applications where people can use it to accelerate their understanding and make more money in their information-rich world. And it paid a lot better than $28,000 a year. So it was the right decision to make. It wasn't the one I wanted, but that's the way the world is. You have to be flexible, and you have to look at the reality of where you are and what you're doing and decide what path makes more sense. It makes more sense to be a marketer. Like, one of my friends was a D- student in marketing, and he made $3.5 million on stage marketing a product in 90 minutes. So is that a D- student? No.
Mm-hmm.
School was boring. It taught him nothing of any value to market. It taught him branding and how to spend $1 billion to say drink Coke or drink Pepsi. And he studied how to sell. And there he was making $3.5 million in 90 minutes. So he basically made more money than his professors will in a lifetime in 90 minutes. So I've gone more along that road because I've seen the reality of the world we live in. And if you're self-employed and you have good business skills, you'll do very well. If you're working for someone else, they'll do very well. Nobody pays you to make money. They pay you to make them money. Mm-hmm. And if they're paying you well, it's because you're making 10 times more than they're paying you. If they gave you $300,000, you made $3 or $4 million. And that's why they gave you $300,000. You're much better off making the $3 or $4 million. And so people have to realize the real advantage in our society is being self-employed and not having a job.
No, I agree, because one of the companies I work for, I alluded to that when I mentioned the standardized testing company. They basically have us, because they're using a rubric, so they're having us grade according to basically doing rote learning, but they do require a college degree. And many of us that work for that company have said, well, why do we need a college degree when you're basically having us do rote work? So there's a number of jobs like that where you're doing the rote work and don't really need the college degree. So they say you need the college degree and all along those lines. So sometimes it is, I think, them making themselves look good, because then they can say that they've got hundreds or thousands of people that have a college degree working for their companies, even though they might not need that particular skill and everything. Because I'm a big fan, even though I didn't go to one of technical colleges and community colleges, because I think there are a lot of folks that are fields that aren't taught enough in our school system and everything. Because I know when I went to school, there was like 3 tracks. There was the vocational track, the college track, and I was on the college track, and to some degree the military track, even though that wasn't technically a track, even because it wasn't like officially one, but there was definitely vocational and a college track. And a number of my friends that on the vocational track went into fields like bricklaying and plumbing and a number of other fields, and some of them are making a whole lot more money than the lawyers and doctors that I know and everything like that. So everybody, do you think we're encouraging enough people to go into the vocational trades and everything like that? So what is y'all's thoughts on that? Because I sometimes think we don't encourage it enough. But I'll start with you, Daniel. Do you think you're over there in Florida? Do you think we're encouraging enough the vocational trade?
No, we're fortunate that in my county there are 2 schools that do have that vocational trade aspect of it and agriculture. But yeah, I really thought I was leaning my son that way. I said, because when we're in a fairly nice neighborhood. I had some stuff that was done in the bathroom. We had to, set up a different bedroom. and you'd see these electricians come in and these plumbers come in, and these guys, young, they're making buku amount of money, no college education. I mean, they're either signing up with their dads or friends of theirs. And I always asked him, I said, because he was curious, he's got a very analytical mind. I thought maybe there's some way it didn't interest him. But yeah, I really wish that I know you probably heard of Mike Rowe. He's the one that did Most Dangerous Jobs. Now he's got a program where kids, and he will give them a scholarship to go into welding, plumbing, electrician work, whatever it is out there. And I'm glad he's doing that. But we need more of those people like that that will give grants or scholarships for that type of work, because it's needed.
Many of those jobs too. They're cash paid jobs.
Right.
As well. My experience anyway, right? Your contractor, your plumber, your, electrician, generally it's cash. Even today, a lot of them don't take credit cards, occasionally an e-transfer if it's, within a certain amount or whatever, but there's still cash businesses, which really helps them tax wise as well.
Yeah,
right?
No, absolutely. I agree.
So who's the smarter one? Who are the smarter people, right?
Right.
You're right.
Right.
Well, this I kind of alluded to you, Howard, earlier, but at least for everybody, because I have judged contests, including some film contests, and ironically, one of them is a genre that I am not the biggest fan of, but I also realized that it included multiple versions of this genre, because I've judged Nevermore, which is a film festival here, and it is partially horror and it is partially fantasy, and it's other things involved. And I've also judged Double Take, which is used to be full, well, it's now Full Frame. It used to be Double Take and everything, but it is documentaries and things like that. So of all those books you've read, Howard, is there a kind of book that you are not a big fan of, that you're not trying to rush to? Because like I said, it took me a while to get past some of those horror movies, and some of them I'm still not the biggest fan of. I'm not the big fan of the Exorcist, Omen type, and all along those lines, just because of my own belief systems, and sometimes they can scare the heck out of me and everything. So I'm just wondering, are there certain kinds of books that you are not a big fan of, and what kind of books is the rest of the audience fans of as well? But is there, out of those 30,000, is there a book that you're like, nope, I'm not reading that, you can't make me read it?
Yeah. I don't read nonfiction, fiction. My time is valuable. So when I want to relax, I'll watch a movie, and I rather watch The Lord of the Rings than read it, although I read it in a couple of hours. I'm more interested in learning skills and things that will improve me. I'm studying guitar. I'm teaching myself guitar. I'm studying marketing and website design, things that I can use to increase my footprint in my business area. And that's where I spend most of my reading time. Science. I'm interested in cosmology. I like things about existence, philosophy. But I really have very little interest in fiction, because it's just something to pablum for the brain. If I want pablum for my brain, I can dumb myself down and watch it on TV. And I read Lord of the Rings, the 3 books, in about 2 hours. But I'd much rather spend 4 hours watching the movie. It makes more sense. The names of those dwarfs all sound like the same person. And when you're reading 80, 90 pages a minute, it sounds like one dwarf. You have no idea which dwarf they're talking about. But when you're watching the movie, they have different beards, so you know which one they're talking to. And I found the movie much more engaging than the book, although it was a good book. So I'm not a big proponent of fiction.
Gotcha. What about you, Lisa? What kind of books are you into or not into, and what things are you finding interesting in your bookshelf? And I'm thinking you don't have a bookshelf as intensive as that of Howard's, but maybe Lisa T, you do have a decent bookshelf as well. So what kind of books are you getting into these days?
Lisa me or Lisa R? Lisa T.
Lisa
okay.
Lisa R.
Since I'm into self-help books, kind of, things that expand my mind, I do, unlike Howard, I do like the occasional fiction book, smutty story, kind of thing, just for entertainment purposes, for the most part, I actually, yeah, I prefer to read things that are inspirational, that I will learn something, from that will be of value in my life.
Yeah, that makes sense. What about you, Daniel? What kind of books are you into and everything?
I'm all over the place. It'll depend on my mood. Love nonfiction, usually history, Civil War, World War I, World War II, all the way back to Revolution. Reading about that stuff. But then I'll switch off and maybe go to Westerns. Recently, there's an author out there called Mike Connolly, and he's from down here in Florida, and he has a series called the Harry Bosch series. It's fiction, but he does a really good job of the law enforcement. He used to be a crime writer out in LA, and he really gets in depth into this character. And this character, Harry Bosch, is on one of the Netflix series a while ago. I think it's coming back again for the final season. And it's really interesting. And once you start, it's one of those things, I don't know if you like Stephen King or not. King was always good in character development, but it's one of those things where it is a page turner. I mean, you want to find out because this character gets, he's a homicide detective, and you want to find out how he solved this. And he's kind of a quirky character. You hate him, you like him. He's kind of gruff and stuff. But and even the character on TV, they picked a really good guy to do it in the series on television. But yeah, right now it's a fiction work dealing with this character, Harry Bosch.
Sounds good. Before I get to Lisa D and everything like that, I can say that there's a writer, I think it's Carl Hyson, that does a lot of detective type novels and everything that's out of Florida. And I've definitely enjoyed some of his books because he has quirky characters as well and everything, because there definitely are some quirky characters that he has. It reminds me almost of the Hemingway style of writing and everything, because they're definitely quirky in that sense. But I need to pick up one of his latest books. I think the last one I had was a few years ago and everything like that. But Lisa D, what about yourself? What kind of books draw your interest?
I will read any book or watch any movie that says based on a true story. I am a true story loving person. The only time I will watch or read anything fantasy is if my son, well, now he's 27, but when he was a teenager or younger, he'd say, Mom, you should read Harry Potter because I'm reading Harry Potter and this and that. So I would read it then. But honestly, I'll read anybody's life story, just about anybody's. I've read like all the Guns N' Roses guys, like, true stories and whatnot. That's probably why I write memoir, because that's what I enjoy.
That makes a lot of sense. And we might even get some new memoirs and everything, because I'm trying to figure out how come Jim Carrey is going back to acting, because apparently he's gone broke. And that's sometimes what gets people to write their memoirs and everything, because he just recently said he's coming back out of retirement because he recently gone broke and everything along those lines. So I'm going like, wait a minute, you made all those successful movies. How did you manage to go broke? But a lot of times we can waste the money that we make, which is something that y'all don't.
Yeah, he's been a starving artist, I think, the past few
years.
What did
you say?
He's an artist as well. He's been living the life of a starving artist. So maybe his.
Oh, that's right, a visual artist. The things might be going on there. Howard, you mentioned something earlier, and then we'll get ready to wrap up shortly, because I do want to get everybody's question that I asked Rhonda when she left and everything. But you mentioned this notion of brain power and tactics and all along those lines and everything. And I've heard for decades that we as humans don't use the amount of brain power that we should use. I think that I've heard estimates as low as 5% of what we actually use and all along those lines. So in your own research, what have you found? Because I've heard a number of people that have floated this notion that we have this great brain of ours and we don't even use it, even though it's built and has the capacity of just about any computer that's out there as well. But that's just one of your take as to whether we are developing the skills to use the fullness of our impact, because I think one of you also mentioned the notion of being an empath, and I don't know that we're even tapping into our other skills that we have as well, because I do think that we have some supernatural skills as in that sense that we may not use, whether it's the ability to empathize with people, which I know Daniel mentioned earlier, empathy and everything, or super strength, which some people have been forced to tap into when they've been put in bad situations. So how much do you feel we're not tapping into our true capacities? And this is for everybody, but I'll start with you, Howard.
The studies show that that's misinformation. Everyone uses all of their brain, just not at the same time. When you look at an MRI, it's not one part of the brain that lights up with each task, but multiple areas light up simultaneously. There's an indication it might be a quantum computer, and that information is transferring from one area to the other without the synaptic connections going in between being involved. And the brain can do 10 to the 800th power connections, which is more than the number of atoms and dark matter and dark energy in the universe. So it has tremendous power. What we're not taught is how to use it. There's no manual on how to learn and how to think and how to process and how to stay in the state you need to be successful. And that's what I focus my business on, is training people on the skills for using the brain they have more effectively. And again, it's at berglearning.com. But everybody's brain has 100% potential, and there's no part that isn't being used. It just, you're not using the part of your brain that plays the guitar when you're taking a bath. So it doesn't mean that part of the brain isn't getting used. It just means right now you're not playing the guitar. So there's no one area that's not as important, but different areas work in synergy for certain tasks.
That makes sense. And this is for everybody along that same line. What do you think is the key to your success? And I'll start with you, Lisa T, and everything. What do you think is the key to your own success? And what do you think is making you the success that you are?
The key to my own success actually is the belief in myself, I guess, you know, and my desire to want to help others. And improve the lives of others through what I've learned, you know, to share that story. And it's interesting how just life, you know, life just works in that way. And, you know, you kind of reach a point where you know that this is the path, you know, you're supposed to be on. And that's where I'm at right now.
Before I get to Daniel, and I definitely want to hear his key to success, but on this show, I've talked to a number of people that have had this notion, and I've been looking at your tiara the whole time, Lisa T, and everything, that we don't tap into enough of our childhood abilities. Because even during the pandemic, I was involved with the Funky Eye Puppets, which is was and it's kind of disbanded right now, even though I think he may be trying to put it back together and everything. But it was an online theater group in Clubhouse, and he would definitely try to get us to tap into our childlike wonder. And I sometimes think that we try to ignore the childlike wonder when we get into adulthood, particularly when we go into corporate America and all in that sense. So I just wondered, how much did you have to tap into that childlike wonder, even into want to get women to realize that they are the queens of their own destiny, no matter what is going on in their body language and everything, and maybe even having some of that kind of fun nature, even in the way that you put out the book and the way that you come on, because I've seen you on other interviews as well. So you definitely have that fun nature. So how much did it take you to tap into that childlike wonder?
You know, it's something that's kind of always been there. And I just had to kind of let her out again. You know, as I was saying earlier, I have half of a voice degree. I was going to be a singer, and I went through a period where I was into acting. I had an agent, and I did some extra work and a few things. But then I also was married and had a family, and I've been a mom. So I've had many hats over the years, and have come to a point. And I know a lot of you aren't a fan of social media, but that is my day job right now. I came, when you come into your own, I think that you start to exuberate it, right? You're living it. So I'm living what I preached, kind of thing, right? What I talk about in my book, I have practiced what I preach. I put the tiara on, and I become a persona, right? Of this queen, this person, and we all have the ability to do that. We just have to tap into that and let it out.
That makes a lot of sense. Daniel, what's the key to your success and everything like that? And are you gonna
Well-
go grab a crown and put it on like Lisa's got the tiara? So what do you put on your crown and everything? I know you've got one tucked around there somewhere and everything. But what do you think is the key to your success, Daniel?
It would just be a baseball hat to hide my bald spot. It's to me, it's curiosity. For me, I was always curious. I find it so different from my son, and not to bring him up, but it might be the generation where I was always curious. And I guess to the point of I would embarrass my parents and my dad, because if something would, I would ask, well, why did you buy that vehicle? Or why did you do a certain thing? And sometimes it was very gruff because my dad was a disciplinarian. But my mom was very good about that. She would answer, this is why this is happening. This is why it's done a certain way. So I was just curious about that. And now at this point, it's like not only curiosity, but that you feel like you're doing the right thing. And when you're doing the right thing, you do get satisfaction and it becomes a success. So that took a long time, because even when I was in the Secret Service, I did not feel like I was successful at what I was doing. I just thought I was dragging through this, and it just became, okay, I'll put my time in, get my retirement, get the heck out of here. But then when you start to talk to some people that are out of that, not in your family, but out of your circle, and they would just tell you, he said, what are you doing? You're successful. Accept that you're successful. It's okay to do that. Not that I'm a perfectionist, but it runs into that area where you also want to be humble. I mean, you don't want to have this giant ego. So it's just something that you balance. And I just always was very curious to talk to people. And I understand I'm old school. Social media is a big deal now, but I want to talk to people. I don't want to text. I don't want to call them on the phone. I want to talk to them face to face. I mean, even, everybody's different, but, I'm kind of glad my wife is different from me. But when we go somewhere on vacation, I'm the one that's going over and talk to strangers. If we're at on vacation or something like that, I want to know, where are you from? What are you doing? How's it going? All this kind of stuff, because you never know. And I tell my son the same thing. You never know who you're going to talk to that possibly could help you in your life in something. They may have they have a job. They may have something that they come up with. And you're like, oh my God, you contact that person. And just for an example, went down to Key West and went into this. It was a shipwreck store. That's what it was called. And you go in there, was all this, it was a stuff from all these shipwrecks, right? I'm like, why are we going in here? I don't know. We stepped in and I started talking to this guy, and he was from Chicago. And like Howard was talking about, he was involved with all these gangs one way or another. He was, just captured by these gangs in this area, and he got arrested, and all this stuff was happening. But we made a connection, and it just, you never know. You just never know. So I made a friend, and every time we got on to Key West, I see this guy. So I tell my son, it's okay to be curious. I know he's shy, he's an introvert. I was like that too. Public speaking, forget it. No, nothing. And you eventually, it just comes out of you and makes you feel good. So I would say definitely curiosity and the belief that you're doing the right thing.
Yeah, that makes sense. What about yourself? What is the key to your success, Lisa G, and everything? So what's the key that you feel to your success?
Well, humor. From a young age, I learned that you can either laugh or you can cry. So I am someone who has a dark sense of humor. I can make jokes about just about anything. I sometimes run things that I think are funny by my son, because he's the only person I know who is as dark as I am. And if he says, "Ooh, yikes, Mom," I know that I shouldn't ever say that again to another living person. But yet humor and strength, believing in myself, like Lisa T said. When I was in my late 20s, I was going through a divorce, and I was seeing a therapist, and I told her, about being sexually abused. And she said, "Well, how old were you when that started?" And I said 2. And she stopped and she said, "How are you not on a street corner right now?" And I just said, "Well, because I didn't want to. I didn't want to do that." So I have a firm belief that no matter where you start out in life, you have a choice. And I've made a lot of mistakes in my life. I'm not perfect, but ultimately I chose not to do drugs to dull the pain and stand on a street corner. I mean,
It makes a lot of
also,
sense. This is for you. Go ahead.
I forgot to
Yeah,
mention
you
stand-up
remember.
comedy. I think everyone, I did stand-up comedy for 10 years. I think everyone should do stand-up comedy because, Daniel, you talk about introverts being afraid to speak or whatever. I am a card-carrying introvert. I am great at speaking publicly. I am funny. The only thing is, after a show, I would go into the kitchen and hide. I have no desire to shake drunk people's hands. That's it. They come up to me, "You were funny." I'm like, "I know, I was there." So why are we having this conversation? But no, I stand-up comedy, I'm not afraid to speak to anybody. You can put me on any stage.
It's funny
I
you
don't
said.
care.
It's funny you said that because I can know that, and this is to everybody. It's kind of what even I think Howard referred to earlier, and everything along those lines, and everything. But I've done events for a number of years, everything from the Road to the Apollo, which takes winners up to the New York Apollo Theater, to festivals, whether it's our Centerfest, which is our street festival here in Durham, or Eno, which is a festival celebrating a state park, and a number of other things. So I've done things in front of thousands, if not of tens of thousands of people, and I would be lying if I said that I am not nervous every time. But as soon as I hit the stage, the nervousness goes out the window. But yeah, I'm oftentimes quite petrified before I go on stage, thinking that I'm not prepared or what I'm going to say and everything. But then I have the ability to turn it off and know I don't do that whole dreaming of everybody, because I know the tricks that they teach you, like visualizing people naked. And I'm sorry, I don't want to visualize some people naked, so I don't do that. But it just escapes me all along those lines, because I'm not trying to visualize certain people in certain ways, even though they say that's a great tactic. But I just find that if you let your nerves calm down and you just go and do what you're supposed to do. And I also believe something that is a truism that a lot of people forget, which is that you can sit there and worry about whatever mistakes you made, or you can just let it ride. And if that mistakes, most people, if they're even at a festival, they're not going to remember. If I totally massacred the name of somebody that I'm introducing, they don't care. They don't know. They don't even know that I massacred it. So I can sit there and fret over it, or I can just say, "Hey, it was a mistake," and let it ride. But yeah, there have been a number of times that I've been nervous before hitting the stage, but as soon as I hit the stage, all those nerves so far have gone out the window. Now that could change tomorrow, but I know that historically that has been the case. I'm going like, "Oops, I'm nervous," but now I'm not nervous anymore when you get to that stage moment and everything. So I don't know if you've had that experience, Howard and Lisa T, but definitely I do things that sometimes we overanalyze what we're doing, and that can be problematic as well.
Yeah, I have always.
What about you, Lisa T? Have you found yourself over?
I found it was easy is to connect with the audience. I used to sing in a duo and in a band and stuff. So I would always start a show with, saying hello, introducing myself or whatever, a few anecdotes, whatever, and then I'd be okay, right? Because I'd go on nervous. And then after I connected with the audience in some way, then I was like, good to go.
Yep. Yeah, because even on the Road to the Apollo, that's what I do. Is I try
little, things to do, I guess.
Yeah, there are our own little nuances. Because even with the Road to the Apollo, which is actually kind of funny, I will do pre-interviews with the people that are the contestants and everything, and they'll give me something about themselves, because they might tell me what school they went to, what college they went to, their aspirations, who their inspirations are, their family members that are in the audience, a number of other little things that are there, including some that have won awards or done these different other things. And I can tell you, because it's usually it's just like the real Apollo. It's a quick interview. I'm trying to maybe tell a quick quip. I won't even call it a joke, but a quip, or maybe a small joke and everything. And I'd be lying if I told you, for the four of you, that there are times that those total notes that I took, and yes, I did it with meticulous with the notes, they went out the window. I'm sitting there even looking at the notes. I'm going like, I have no idea what this was, but I'm also interviewing them. So even though I know what the answers are, I may not even use the quip that I was originally planning, or I may come up with a whole nother quip or something along those lines. But yeah, it's good to have it just as a cheat sheet, for lack of a better term, and everything. But sometimes I don't even wind up using the material that I've spent that time researching to get and everything. So sometimes you do all that research and you don't even wind up using those conversation points.
Mhm.
Definitely happens. It
Have
definitely
you seen?
happens.
Yeah, so I think a lot of people have been in that kind of situation. Uh, Howard, what do you think is the biggest mistake that people made in terms of leadership? We've been talking about leadership, and then I'm going to get to that last question, and we'll get ready to wrap this up because I've thoroughly enjoyed the conversation with all four of you, as well as the Rhonda when she was here. We did have another gentleman that had to bounce out and everything, but I've thoroughly enjoyed our conversation. Hope I can get you back for another one of these dinner parties, sometimes held at the Haytown where I'm at today, or sometimes held at my home office and everything along those lines. But what do you think is the key to successful leadership, just in your own mind? And I'd love to hear from the others, and then I'll get to that question for everybody that I ask everybody.
Depends on the type of leadership. So
Howard.
one type of leadership is a quarterback. He can only win if the team wins. So he has to be a team player. Another type of leader is a surgeon. He doesn't ask the nurse which scalpel to give him. He tells them what he wants, and they don't tell him what he should want. He's in full command of his position. Another leader would be a mayor who has to delegate responsibilities to subordinates. He might coordinate it, he might be the visionary, but the actual implementation goes to other people. So it's really important as a leader to know which type of leader you are and be the best at the type of leader you are. You don't want a surgeon who's a quarterback, and you don't want a quarterback who works like a surgeon. And it's important for a leader to recognize real leadership is empowering other people and making them the best at what they do instead of demeaning them and pulling them down to raise yourself up. And there's far too many people in business that demean their workers and their associates to give themselves an ego boost at the expense of the self-esteem and creative abilities of the others. And unfortunately, that's a big problem today in industry. And many people leave their jobs not because they don't like what they do, but the person they work for is obnoxious and doesn't appreciate what they do or encourage them to do it well. So it's a complex question. It's not a simple one.
No, that makes a lot of sense. Hey, Daniel, along those same lines, I'm glad you brought that up about the visionaries and everything, because I've seen a number of visionaries that sometimes are wanting to co-opt other visionaries as well and everything like that. I've even seen that in law enforcement and everything, where sometimes people are not willing to do enough delegation and they want people to kind of like buy into their dream, not understanding that their dream may not be the other person's dream, and all along those lines. And like I said, I've seen it in not just business, but also law enforcement and nonprofits and a number of other places as well. So how have you avoided that even when you were doing Secret Service work? Because I do think that sometimes those visionaries, and I'm not knocking visionaries, I consider myself to be a visionary, but sometimes they are wanting everybody to kind of like buy into their dream and not realizing that the others may have other dreams and ambitions of their own.
Well, there was a hierarchy, and it was, semi-military. So you did have a rank structure, and gone through,
Right.
I want to say hundreds and hundreds of bosses, and I became the boss myself through rank. So you find out what works and what doesn't, and you'd see, captains and chiefs, deputy chiefs, and lieutenants and sergeants, how they operate and how people respond. Very easy to see because. Especially when I worked at the White House, which was more of a small city, and you'd see how these leaders would work, and it just kind of sometimes you'd shake your head because it was, hey, I'm the boss, and this is what you're going to do, and that was the same thing with rank. You'd see a lot of people that started as officers were one thing. As soon as they got rank, they became a monster, became something else, and it was very hard to tell them, hey. Remember when you were an officer and this happened? Now all of a sudden you get rank and you're on a power stream. So I learned from that, and I was glad that when I became a supervisor, first a sergeant and then a lieutenant, my job and the basic job that was to get my people promoted. That was my job, to empower them to whether they wanted rank or whether they want a specialized position, because we had everything from K9 to counter snipers to ERT to all these specialized units that they needed a very good evaluation in order to get into. So I wanted to empower these people to do that because that's what worked for me. And I could on one hand, I could count the number of leaders that inspired me to become that kind of leader. And I was very glad when I left there that I had officers that just came up out of the blue. And some of them I only worked for 6 months, and would just say, thanks, you're a really good lieutenant, you're a really good sergeant. And to hear that kind of feedback, instead of, having your name written on a bathroom wall, how much of a, a-hole you were, and that happens. I mean, that happens. It happens in business also. And I went from that into the school system bureaucracy, which was, a county job. And that was the same kind of thing. When I started there, I had a boss that was very encouraging. And to tell you the truth, for me, I know people are different. It wasn't about the money. It wasn't about, hey, I need a raise. Look at all the work I'm doing. It was about a pat on the back. That worked better for me, and I could see it work better for other people. A pat on the back saying you're doing a hell of a job. I'm behind you. I really like what you're doing. I'm going to tell the bosses about this. It wasn't about, money. That wasn't it for me. It might be money for other people. That's all they concentrated on. But I saw better results from people that got a pat on the back and said, you're doing a hell of a job from a boss. That just, your eyes would light up like, wow, somebody appreciates me. So that's what I learned from that. I think people, respond to that better.
No, I agree, because I do sometimes think, and this is not a left or right conversation or Democrat, Republican, but I do think that sometimes in politics, and I've even seen that locally and definitely nationally on both sides, the Democrats and Republicans, that there are too many people that depend on yes, man, and people that just go say yes no matter what and everything like that. And I think that that's where we get too caught up in the political landscape these days, that we got a lot of people that are just asking for people that are basically condone whatever they have in their plans and everything. So are we getting caught up in too much of the yes man and yes woman, because they're yes women too, mentality and everything? So I just wondering, is this something you feel we're getting too caught up with, folks that want somebody that will basically back whatever they're saying, whether it's good or not good? And I think that that's a corporate trait. But I just wanted your take, Daniel. Do you think we're getting too many people that just want to say get along to get along to go along, if I can use that expression?
No, exactly.
Like
no,
myself, so I can definitely use the expression.
Yeah, no, it's an easier path. It's an easier path to say yes. Why would I want discussion? No one likes conflict. You don't. Look, when I was a supervisor, if I had to go to someone and discipline them, are you kidding? You talk about, anxiety. No one wants to go over there and discipline this person. And what would happen is, even if it was something minor, it was something, no, I don't want to go. I don't want to discipline. I don't want to write them up in their evaluation. No one wants to be the bad guy. So you take the easier path. You pass it on to somebody else. And then eventually that person is going to continue doing what they're doing, and they were reprimanded, and then they're going to screw up in the worst possible way. So you do have to, as a supervisor, that you do have to do that. And I don't know who it was. I think it was Welch. I think he used to work for GE. I think he said, about 10% of your employees, they're bad apples. You got to get rid of them. You got to get rid of those 10% of rotten apples. And the same thing in law enforcement. I know we talked about Uvalde, but there's rotten apples in every industry, every business. You have to do that. I mean, my wife is a doctor in her office, and you struggle with that. I don't want to fire somebody. I don't want to discipline this person. No one wants to do that. But if you don't, you're going to get yourself in trouble down the line, because it's going to be a told you so moment. Like, wait a minute, how many times are you going to allow this person to mess up and ruin your business or screw something up? So it has to be done. You can't just let it go. Like you said, a yes man or a no man or a no person. You don't take the easiest path. Yeah. Sometimes it's hard.
Yeah, and competence can be very scary. My dad just had a heart surgery not long ago, and he was successful and has been recovering nicely and everything. But I would hate to have a doctor that not know what he was doing trying to operate. We actually learned about the doctor before he did the surgery, and he had a great reputation and a very powerful reputation. So we were relatively comfortable even when he went into surgery, even though you're always nervous anytime anybody goes under the knife and everything like that. But yeah, if they had a bad reputation, then that would be something that we'd really be concerned about. But unfortunately, this doctor had a tremendous reputation as being successful, and it doesn't have, like, if I can use the Yelp terminology, a lot of negative reviews and things along those lines. So definitely, I think you got to be worried about that, particularly even in your wife's field, the medical school field. Because I don't know about the rest of y'all. Knock on wood, I'm in good health right now, but I don't want, if I was to get in bad health, to be being administered by somebody that was known to be not that great of a doctor. So I don't think that any of us on this panel would want that. We'd want somebody that we knew was competent and all along those lines. So competence is very important in everything. Well, it's been a great show, and I've thoroughly enjoyed it. Get ready to wrap up, and I'm going to go round robin. I might get off screen just for a second and everything that I've done a couple of times doing this show and everything. But if folks want to tell folks how they can be reached, anything that they didn't get to, and I'll go round robin. So I'll start with you, Howard, and then go to Lisa T, and then you, Daniel, and then Lisa G, and everything. But if you can tell folks how they can reach you, get in touch with you, and all along those lines, and any things that you might want to share that you haven't shared, and of course that message of positivity, because that's what I try to do on all these shows, because it's my tool of empathy and trying to make the world a better place. Because I think that every little small step that we can do to make the world a better place is encouraging. So even if it's only 4 or 5 people every Wednesday saying a positive word or a positive affirmation, maybe that's making a positive impact on the world that we live in, and at least that's my hope and everything like that. So I'll start with you, Howard, if you want to say how you can be reached. You've said that a couple of times, but if you want to say it again, any messages that you didn't get to, and your message of positivity.
My website's berglearning.com. My programs will double to quadruple their learning rate so their kids could do better in school and they can make more money at work. And we offer a total satisfaction guarantee. I make sure they learn the program so they get the benefits they're paying for, or we don't charge them. So it's a program design. You look at the world, you say, is there too many smart people making too many good decisions? Nobody's complaining about that problem. I think there's a need to empower people with the power to learn and understand and make better choices, and that'll make a better world more than bullets and hate and anger. And that's what I'm doing.
I appreciate it, and I'm glad to have you on, and hopefully we can get you back on this show and other shows as well. What about you, Lisa T? If you want to share a little bit more about your book, as well as any message of positivity that you want to share, and how folks can reach you. I know I have not forgot. I still have to put you in touch with Omasadi so y'all can have that connection as well, and everything along those lines. But any messages you want to share in the message of positivity?
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Lisa
This
T.
is my book. It's The Menopause Mind Shift, How I Unleashed My Anger. It's all pretty pink with the tiara, like I said. In front of at the beginning of each chapter is actually a quote, a positive quote. And so I'm just going to read one here. It is, I am a queen and I shine brightly through my menopause years. And that is my mission, my goal, and my message to all women is that it is possible to shine bright, and you always have it within you to do that. And I can be reached at themenopausemindshift.com, all my socials, book, lots of stuff. Information is all on the website.
Well, I appreciate it. Definitely appreciate that and everything. Just out of curiosity, before I get to Daniel, have any, because I know it's a women-oriented book, but have any man-found tips in your book that they have been able to put into their own life as well? Because like I said, I know menopause is definitely a women's topic, but there is the whole notion of male menopause and a couple of other things that have been brought up in society. But I just wanted to, just the book itself, have people found ways to address it, even of the other gender?
I do talk about the journey I've had with my
Lisa.
husband and his own hormonal journey a bit. There is such a thing as male menopause. It's called andropause, and it affects more men than we think. And it's a different situation when you and your spouse are going through this at the same time. So while it's not a really a read that is particularly for men, they may, if they did, read it, it might help them understand their spouse or partner's perspective and what they might be going through. But also, I do talk about what the things that some men do go through, and and how that can affect them and their lives.
I appreciate that and everything. Daniel, to tell us about your book and message of positivity that you would like to share as well. And if there's anything that we haven't got to, including on the security front and everything like that. I was thinking as you were talking, I was going like, and I'll just throw it out there, and maybe that could be part of your answer as well. Your thoughts as to whether we are still as successful as we should be in the way we protect our leaders, and not just the president, because I know what happened with president-elect and everything, but just even some of the folks that are here. Because I mean, we just had Reverend Barber here, and I don't think that there was that much. Well, there was a personal security, and if somebody had decided to do an attack, I don't know what we would have done in that situation, because that was like about 3 weeks ago, and we know that he's part of like a movement against poverty and all along those lines. So I don't think that sometimes even civil rights leaders don't have enough protection, but that's just my own thoughts and everything. But I was wondering your thoughts as to in any way that you want to answer. I'll just throw that out there.
Yeah, well, if I start with that, Mark, I mean, I don't want to take too long. Obviously it is a dangerous world. And again, it's not my lane, but, we do have mental health issues. And because of the mental health issues, whether in an urban area, whether in a city and in a country, these people need help. And a lot of budgetary reasons should go towards help with these individual mental health. And that area, we talk about the United Healthcare CEO, but also in the school setting, because it's just not as available as it used to be. I know one thing I do want to mention. I know Lisa G had mentioned what they do with students that are troubled. There are schools that set up what are called CRED assessment teams, and they'll get together with a social worker, the principal, the assistant principal, law enforcement, probably the HBO, the head plan operator, and they'll meet at least weekly to talk about what's going on with these students. So that is very, very helpful. That was something that was not thought of 5-6 years ago. It just wasn't. And they're starting this now, and it's a good thing. Anyways, I don't want to take up that much more of your time. The book is called The First 5 Minutes. Again, you can find it on Amazon. Like I said, it's a short book, very concise. It's not very expensive. I am on LinkedIn. I know I've got that weird last name, but you can look me up there. Check the bio. There are other podcasts on there if you want to take a look. On Facebook, I've got a personal page, but also I've got the First 5 Minutes page on Facebook. The positivity. What I like to tell people, again, I don't want people to be paranoid. I just want you to be aware. And it's hard to do. A lot of times you just forget because you're not worried about, the cliche is situational awareness. I mean, come on, you're not in the military or in law enforcement. However, when you go out to your family, go to a restaurant, a movie theater, mall, whatever, remember there are other exits. Because what happens nine times out of 10 is if an emergency happens, you're going to go to that entrance you just came in. It happens a lot in fire. When you go into an area restaurant, just look around. Where's the other exit? Where are the other exits? Same thing in a movie theater, whatever. Just be aware like that. Keep yourself safe, and you're going to be able to keep your family safe. But yeah, just have that kind of awareness when you go to areas like that. If there's an emergency, where else can I get out? Because everybody else is going to go to that where you just came in at that entrance. Thank you. And thank you, Mark, for having me on.
Daniel, before I get to Lisa G and we wrap up the show and everything.
This is my book. That's me when I was 8 years old, standing in front of palm trees.
Before you get out, before I get to Lisa G and
Oh, I'm sorry. There's a delay with the audio with me. I hope I didn't interrupt you. This is the book, Chasing Normal. That's 8-year-old me. My positive message is that people should not own the shame. If they've been abused, you have nothing to be ashamed of. And you absolutely should talk to somebody about it. If you would like to reach me, I have lisagirardi.com, lisagirardiwriter.com. I am also on LinkedIn, Daniel, and I have my private Facebook page that I sometimes will accept everybody too. I don't really put anything too private on it. And I'm on Instagram. So there you go. I have a TikTok, but I'm not quite sure how to tick my talk yet.
Mark's talking, it's not coming through.
Okay.
we're a little slight delay.
There is.
Maybe the other Lisa can help you on that since she's a social media wizard and everything. So maybe she can help you with
Yeah.
the TikTok. And I'm still trying to figure out TikTok as well.
I'm getting there myself. Getting there. TikTok.
Do
Yeah,
you
TikTok
hear
was
me?
last year. But anyway, just before
Okay.
we
There's a
head
slight
off, there,
delay
thank
and
you
everything.
again, Mark.
Yeah, hopefully y'all
So
can
nice
hear me and everything along those lines. But I was saying that Lisa G can hopefully help. Lisa T can maybe help.
I'll connect.
Thank you.
All right.
You know, I
So nice
thoroughly
to
enjoyed
meet
having
everybody
y'all
again.
on and everything. Get ready to get on out of here with these commercials, and definitely enjoyed the conversation. Daniel, we'll have to bring you back because one of the things that I was curious about, and yep. Everybody will be connected and everything like that. Daniel, one thing I was curious about
I want to thank everyone for coming to the 2020 TAF Awards. This was a show like no other, people. This is the Grammys for dignitaries, educators, and support staff around the state of Oklahoma and worldwide. We cannot do this without the support of the people. So we thank you, I thank you, for being such a dedicated supporter to this movement for the Teachers Appreciation Foundation. I thank you.
Okay, I guess that's it.
Are you looking for money-saving strategies for your business and personal finances? Are you tired of working hard every day with little or nothing to show for it? Contact Prosperity Financial Services, LLC right now for your free financial consultation. Call now to reserve yours today, 804-349-8600, 804-349-8600.
It's time for Bible or Babble. Gather round for your new favorite show. If you little work, show 'em what you know. Let's go. Bible or Babble. It's Bible. Let's go. All in every saint, we gon' put you to the test. See who know that B.I.B. a little best. Bible or Babble.
I want to thank everyone for coming to the 2020 TAF Awards. This was a show like no other, people. This is the Grammys for dignitaries, educators, and support staff around the state of Oklahoma and worldwide. We cannot do this without the support of the people. So we thank you, I thank you, for being such a dedicated supporter to this movement for the Teachers Appreciation Foundation. I thank you.
It's time for Bible or Babble. Gather round for your new favorite show.